With that, I'd recognize Senator Lankford for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And for all of you, thank you. I do remind people back home, because in Oklahoma we're extremely grateful for many folks in the armed services that service every single day. We recognize them, see them, recognize them by their uniforms, but I remind them also there are a lot of people in the intelligence community they won't recognize at all, and they'll never see, and they'll never be able to thank personally. So would you pass on our gratitude to them, and we are incredibly grateful for the very difficult work that they do every single day. Director Clapper, you said this morning, in your 50 years in the intelligence business, you can't recall a more diverse array of challenges. And you grace us with a long list of doom, as you listed it just now, whether that be space, whether that be proliferation, whether that be radical Islamic terrorism and such. I want to focus on one of the areas you talked about specifically, and that's narcotics and the movement into our country and what we deal with on a day-to-day basis as a challenge. Again, this morning you had mentioned you thought the focus should be more on interdiction. So my challenge is for this group and my interest, what are we doing on the intel gathering to be able to find out what's happening, the pathways that some of these narcotics are moving into the United States, and the interdiction, and how we cooperating among agencies? How's that communication going?
Well, sir, the challenge, as I indicated this morning, and I hark back to a series of testimonies by General Kelly, the former commander of the Southern Command, in which he made the point that we did have a great deal of intelligence on drug flow into the United States. Our challenge has been the lack of resources sometimes to react to it, to actually interdict it. So in one sense, I think that's a plea or a commercial for more operational assets to respond. I would, big fan of the Coast Guard, and I think the Coast Guard has done some great work. The deployment of these new Coast Guard cutters, which has a national security component to it, has had a dramatic impact when they've been able to be employed. So to me, the big thing here is the operational resource to respond. I think the community works very well together on the issue of drug intelligence and facilitating interdiction.
Any other comments on that from any of the leaders? Let me move on then as well, because there's been a lot of conversation about Libya and ISIL and their movement into other areas they call provinces and moving all around the world. Libya has been especially large in that. What do you think is ISIL's intentions in Libya?
Well, I think they, not unlike what they've done with in Syria and Iraq. What's unique about ISIL, of course, is its possession and control over territory. And that's been the case in Syria and Iraq. And of course, that presents certain vulnerabilities when they assume the accoutrements or the traits of a nation state. I think it's similarly their goal in Libya, you know, essentially an ungoverned space and also access to substantial oil resources, just as they've had in Syria. So I think there is some commonality. So they're right now kind of centered or headquartered in Sirte, which is kind of in the center of the coast of Libya. And they're trying to spread out along the coast and take over more and more areas. They are present, as I indicated in my statement, in the major cities, notably Benghazi and Tripoli.
Okay. You'd mentioned as well about Iran still being the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world. How have you seen that role and that direction towards terrorism and support of terrorism since the signing of the JCPOA? Since that has occurred, have you seen a change in Iran's behavior towards sponsor of terrorism?
I have not seen a change in the behavior of the Quds Force. They are right now kind of consumed with the situation in Iraq and Syria, and as well in supporting the Houthis in Yemen. So that has been the focus predominantly. That's not to say they're not interested elsewhere, but that's where the focus of their efforts have been.
And again, you had mentioned this morning that there have been about 140 missiles launched by Iran in violation of UN agreements, and then 2 additional just in the last few months. Any change in behavior you've seen in their testing of ballistic missiles?
No, and you're exactly right, Senator Lankford. That's what I said. That since 2010 and the promulgation of the UN Security Council Resolution 1929, they've fired up about 140 missiles. About half of them that took place during the negotiations. They launched 2, one in October and one in November, which I personally think was a message that they are still going to continue to develop what is already a very robust missile force.
Okay. Thank you. I yield back.